Well, lovely to see your face, Coach. How's your break, first of all, and how many cigars have you smoked?
The break's been wonderful. Just got back from a great fishing trip with my daughter up in Canada, and I'm actually in a hotel right now. I'm traveling across the coast here in Florida to another side for a 2 or 3 day getaway with my wife, and I've smoked about 1 million cigars, so everything is going very well, and yeah, all good.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Are
Yeah.
you? I know you have things you need to do basketball-wise on your break, but do you try and switch off as much as you can from basketball in this little period?
Yeah, and the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was just trying to just detach as much as I could and kind of reflect on obviously the season and what transpired, and then after that, we Zoom once or twice a week at the minimum, either with Darren or Mika or my staff. I just had a Zoom yesterday with my staff, so we're in constant communication or something that has to go on with the front office or Christine Finnegan. So I'm available in the evenings at this time, which is good for me, and then just doing a bunch of Zooms, and we'll continue to do that until I get back, and we still have some things to tidy up and get our scheduling down and those kind of things as we move closer to the end of July when guys start coming back in the market.
Have you taken a few moments to reflect on what you were able to achieve last year, or have you already moved on and looking for NBL 25?
I know it's a little bit of both. Actually, when I got back, I mean, I first watched the game the first time ever on the flight home. And then when I've been home in that first 2 or 3 weeks, I actually saw, clips of stuff here and there that I hadn't seen during the finals or interviews or things like that. So, it was obviously extremely special and a great moment. And to see the faces of Tasmanians and our players' faces and the emotion they had for that has been, remarkable. But it is time to change the page, turn the page, and move on, and that's what we're going to do.
Going to ask you about some of your recruits and what's
Yep.
up with Roman, because obviously Next Star's been a hot topic with you for a while. You want to make sure you got the right person to fit in with the group. What was the standout thing with Roman that made you feel like he would be a good Next Star for the Jack Jumpers?
Well, initially, he came, I don't know what it is now, 3 or 4 months ago with his mom for a visit. And we had a nice time and a nice chat with him. And at that point, we were definitely set on our sights of having him as a developmental player. And that was kind of what our goal was. And that's kind of, our mindset of what the program would be as a 2-year developmental program, a player with a roster spot maybe in the second year. So we were all systems go with that. And then, over the last few weeks, the NBL stepped in and wanted to see if we were still be interested if he was a next star, which was fine with me, as long as we kept, the program that we presented to not only NBL, but to his agent, to his family on track. So they were all in agreement with that. And, the thing that excites me about this particular thing is, I really love the Next Star program as far as when it has to do with Australian players. And I think that excites me the most, that he is an Australian player, and that we'll get to work with him for 2 years.
Yeah, great. And obviously Chicken Sword.
Yeah.
Did you know much about him before you started looking into his career and his stats and things?
Well, actually, where I am right now is a couple hours from my house. I'm actually going to have lunch with him and his fiance tomorrow. They're about 30 minutes away from where I am right now. And so I'll get to meet him in person really for the first time. But when his name got presented to us in a rather kind of bizarre way and how it all fell together, but it was a no-brainer. And where we were and what financial things we were looking at, he was just a home run for us. And we couldn't be happier to have him. He's a disruptor. He's a defender. He doesn't need the ball. A high energy guy, athlete, is seasoned and been in the league for a while with the G League and USA Basketball, and a good family guy. And we're excited to have him. And I think he'll be, very entertaining to watch. And I think our guys will love playing with him.
Thank you. I'll let someone else jump in. I might come back a bit later.
Yep.
G'day, Scott. Chris here from
Hey, Chris.
ABC, looking refreshed and relaxed, which is good to see.
Yeah.
Just on Roman and the Next Star program, is there still a level of sort of push and pull there in terms of him having to play certain amounts of minutes and certain amounts of role or anything like that? Or is it full control from you guys in terms of what he does with the Jack Jumpers this year?
Well, I don't want to use the word full control, but there has nothing been promised to him other than his development in his first year, and we'll try to get him on the floor if we can. And then his second year, have him up and ready to go. So it's been crystal clear about what our plan is with him and how we go about doing that. He's got a lot of hoops to jump through to get to the floor. And sometimes I think people get a little excited because he scores X amount of points in an NBL one game, but it doesn't translate to the NBL. You know, Drimmick had 49 about a month ago in an NBL one game, but it doesn't translate to us. So he's a talent. We're excited to have him. He's got a lot of players to jump over. He's got a lot of things on and off the floor, especially to start his habits of becoming a pro. And we're going to really focus on those things first. And then if he gets some opportunities on the floor, he does. And if not, he'll just have to go about his business and do what all of our players do and wait for their opportunities to come. But he's going to have some great role models to follow. And we got some great professionals to be around him. And I think he's in a really good spot with us.
He could have had his pick of the litter just about, and he could have even chosen a different sport at one stage. What was it about the jack jumpers, do you think, in terms of your pitch to him that got him over the line?
Well, I think two things were hugely important to him. His mom was a huge factor, I think, in all this, and his mom loves Mika Bacona, and rightfully so, and the relationship that she has and the trust she has with Mika and having her son come down here. And then I think once he came down here and saw what we did in the 2 days that he was here and saw a game at My State Bank and understood the culture of how we work, I think he just, locked in and said, this is a place where I want to be. And we felt very good for about 2 or 3 months that we would end up getting him. We just had to go through the process. And again, initially was going to be in a DP role, but it's flipped over to the next star thing. But I think he just saw the environment. I think he saw that, he's 17 and he's still growing and he needs some time to grow on and off the floor. And what better place to come and do what we do here, because we've had a lot of success with a lot of our players getting better year in and year out. And I think it was just a no-brainer for him in one level to come and play. He still has a lot of things going on. He has his national responsibilities that are going to be coming up. I don't even know if he's going to be able to play in the Blitz, to be quite honest with you. I think he's going to be playing with his national team for the under 18s. And so he has a lot of other commitments also going on, which we want him to do that are with the Boomers, with the national team organization over there, and want him to follow through on those things also. So he has a big road ahead of him, and we're happy to be on the road with him and guiding them.
Just on Will Magnai, I'm sure you'd absolutely love to see him get a chance in the NBA once again. But how much planning has gone into a contingency for you guys in case that does happen?
Yeah, I mean, we have some things that we can do to pivot, or we can just stay the way we are, and we'll just see how this all plays out. I know Magnai has had a couple workouts in the last 2 or 3 days, and then he'll come back and start the Boomer process. The camps that he's going to is actually just mini camps. There'll be 30 or 40 or 50 guys at some of these camps that he'll be going to, and they'll have those over June as they get ready to form their summer league team. So I think it worked out well that he had a chance to come over and work out with some of the Boomer players in LA before he had 1 or 2 of these workouts with some of these NBA teams. But it's just a good experience for him. And again, his health is our number one thing. And, our big thing with him really is to get him on the Boomers roster has been his and McVay's goal from day one. And that's what we're really hoping for. The NBA is the NBA. And if it happens, it happens. But if we have to pivot, we'll pivot. If not, I'm confident with the guys we have, and we always seem to manufacture a way or find our way, and we'll do it again if we have to.
And just one last one from me. There was some talk in the off season from Christine about having the high performance center and the facility issue resolved before you got back. I think everybody wanted that before you touched down back in Hobart. Have you been satisfied with how that's played out, and are you happy where things sit in regards to the facility?
I mean, I'm happy that we're talking. As I've said, it's been talked for 3 years, and I think that they're getting to the pointy end of everything. But until I see some dirt moved or a sign put up that this is the home of the Jack Jumpers, or something that is evident that there might be a bulldozer or a shovel nearby, I'll wait and see, because it's been a very slow 3-year process, and I haven't seen anything again be built for basketball in the state. And I'm hopeful that this gets going as soon as possible, and that we can move forward, because not only do we need it, but the state needs the improvement across the board. And I understand there's a lot of things that the government promises with healthcare and education and all those things. But I hope that we can get ours going. We patiently have waited for 3 years, and it's time.
Thanks, Scott. I'll handball you to somebody else. Cheers.
Yep.
Hey, Scott, it's John from the Mercury here, mate. How are you?
Oh, good. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Just following on for a couple of things you just touched on just then, actually. Will and Jack, I mean, obviously with the Boomers selections coming up, what do you feel they can bring to the squad if they get in, and also performing in big games like they just have? I mean, how much should that be taken into account when the selectors are sitting down as well?
Well, I think that, Brian Gorgeon's got to feel comfortable with his group. And he has a tough decision because there's a lot of really good players. There's a lot of really good NBA players. There's a lot of good, obviously, local talent that is not playing in the NBA that's going to be available. And so he just has to find the right chemistry for him. And the thing about Magnai is, at his size and his ability to put pressure on the rim and doesn't need the ball to go play. And his defensive minded is obviously, I think, a bonus for most teams that want somebody like that. But he's up against, some really good competition there. And the same thing with Jack. Jack's obviously in the last year has taken off, and he's an elite shooter. And so that's something that I think is always in the back of your mind as a coach, especially when you get to the national level and playing, in the Olympics, that you want guys that can knock some shots down at crucial moments. And he does that no better than anyone else. So I think they have some chances there. And again, it will just go down to what, Brian is comfortable with, and hopefully, one or both can get on that roster, which would be a huge thing for not only them, but for the Jack Jumpers.
And you touched on facilities there as well, which I guess sort of came to the fore. I'm based in Launceston, and they had a big tournament up here the weekend just gone, where some courts had to be used in Deloraine at different colleges, traveling out of Launceston just to find a court. I guess it highlights what you're talking about before, and just how well overdue it is to get that cranking, because who knows how big basketball could be down here if the facilities are up to scratch.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this in jest, but I also kind of mean it in a real way. I don't know why that Tasmania can't be the Lithuanian of Europe in the basketball world for Australia. Why it can't be the Mecca of basketball. We have everything going for us. We just need the facilities, because the amount of growth has been unparalleled, I think, anywhere in Australia. And the amount of kids they're trying to play is tremendous. And so why not make Tasmania the home of basketball for maybe Australia just in general? I know it's a crazy thought, but at the end of the day, the state hopefully will step forward and start building some of these facilities and start refurbishing the ones that aren't available to be rebuilt. And again, just change a light bulb, clean the floor up, put some paint on some walls, fix up the bathrooms. We're not asking for a ton of things to get done in some of these facilities that I know can't get refurbished as quickly, but they seem like a simple fix. But how it goes about, I'm not quite sure, but we definitely need it as soon as possible across the state, not just obviously with the Jack Jumpers facility, but across the state. I've traveled everywhere in the state. I've been to every facility that houses anything that has to do with any kind of large events for Tasmanian basketball. And besides Alverson, in my opinion, it's the only one that doesn't need to be refurbished. Everything else needs to have some fresh paint put on it.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yep.
Yeah, Scott here. Brian here in Launceston as well, Scott. Just reflecting on the last couple of seasons, I think in season one, obviously looking at the finals there, the team relied pretty heavily on Josh Adams. And then I guess looking in, I thought in season two, probably needed some talls, and then you brought in three imports. Oh, sorry, a few imports that were talls. And that seemed to work a treat. What's the strategy going into season three with reflecting on those first two?
Well, the first season was just trying to put a team together as best we could. And, we had basically a 1 and a 2, and we ended up with a 4 with Kyle McIntosh. And in the second season, we kind of used that same formula again with bringing in Milt and Majette and then Trey Kelly. So both those situations, we were hopeful that Magnai was going to be up and running and playing a little bit more and ready to go. And then the season 3, we went with obviously the same thing with getting a point guard again and having Milt come back. And we knew that from what the doctors had told us, that, you know, Mags was not going to be available for about the first 8 to 10 games of the season. And then after that, we didn't know. And I don't think the doctors knew, and I don't think Will knew. And so to protect ourselves, we went with a big in Marcus Lee, which obviously was helpful throughout the entire season for us as Magnai got his feet back underneath him. And then this year, we felt like Gorgon Jack is a sleeper that needs development, that needs work, and can fill some of the role that Marcus Lee did. I mean, Marcus Lee ended up averaging, I think, 6 points and 6 rebounds in 13 or 14 minutes a game. So we are trying to replace that number. And I also will be end up playing Majuk Dang at the 5. We have Fab there. So we have a combination of guys, along with hopefully Magnai, knock on wood, coming back ready to go. And so that allowed us to find kind of an X factor, just a wing type of player that can guard 1 through 4, which Chicken can, and be a disruptor. And we went with that formula, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I guess now that you've seen the NBL over a few seasons, like, is it, I guess, how important is it to have the tools? I'm only saying it based on season 1, like Josh really stood out, and obviously Jordan has stood out in last season. But I guess, yeah, what's the kind of the essential parts of the mix you need in NBL?
Well, I mean, every team is built differently because team's got different recruiting tactics and have recruiting strengths that they can go and get players, and other ones have financial constraints. So, you know, if you look across the league, there's always a combination of those guys playing in some fashion or form. But I think one of the things that has been proven in the last 3 years is that if you have a really good scoring point guard or a guy that can put up numbers there, you have a good chance of having a team that can score the ball and get into the playoffs. And a lot of the teams have gone with that, with a combination of a 1 and 2 guys that can score. And we are obviously in that same mode. And then it was just, how do you fill out the rest of your roster, depending on what type of players you have or what type of financial availability you have to go get players. So for us, it's just more about just being flexible and pivoting. But the big key for me is to retain our guys, is to have this 6 or 7 guy core group to continue to move through over the next few years. And now we have guys coming back in their 4th year, some guys coming back in their 3rd year, which is, I think, a huge advantage when you're going into a season of what's expected and the group's chemistry.
And just last one, like, I know this is sort of the brutal nature of sport, but just for the guys moving on, and like your Bairstows and Barker and those types, like, I guess they've been part of this championship winning group, and then obviously, only a month or a few weeks later they're out of it. I guess, how do you reflect on that as coach? Because obviously you'd have such great relationships with them.
Well, it's a great question. And, I will tell you that, the toughest thing I had to do last year was release Josh Majette and Matt Kenyon. Those two were, hit me in the heart, Josh especially with his leadership, and then Matt, coming basically to us when teams really didn't want him. And then, Isaac White and Sam McDaniels were a huge part of that. So those guys, set the foundation for us, and in transition, especially in basketball, is quite common. And to release those guys, I thought, well, this is going to probably be the toughest thing I have to do. And it was very difficult to have those conversations with those guys. But this year, Jared Bairstow's conversation was much, much harder to have the conversation with him. He's loved by everyone. And, there's a lot of crying going on in that conversation with him and his wife. And it was a difficult thing to say that, we're moving forward. And he kind of already understood that a little bit. And but what he's done for 3 years with this franchise will not be forgotten. I will not allow it to be forgotten. And, at some point it's going to be Clint Steino. At some point it's going to be Jack Mouvet. At some point it's going to be someone else. It's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But this conversation I had with Jared Bairstow was extremely hard. And with Lucky, it was just a numbers thing. I would love to have Lucky back. A great kid, a great worker. But it's a numbers thing at the end of the day. And that's one of the things that have kept him out of the league. He's on the fringe. And we just had to move on.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
I might ask another one then, Scott. Like
Yep.
Jordan Crawford, was he always
Yep.
on the radar to come back, or did you have a look around at other possibilities?
Well, we have a list that's going, continuously for 3 or 4 months before we even get to the end of the season. And one thing about Jordan is he deserved to come back. I think people kind of misread me taking him out of games, but I would have done that with Milton Doyle, and I've done that with Milton Doyle or Josh Majette or Josh Adams. If you're not playing well, you're not playing well. And he wasn't great the whole year, but he was pretty darn good the whole year. And same thing with Milton Doyle. He had a really tough patch just before, and then obviously after his father passed away. And so you're just not going to have a steady, great season all the time. But what he did do is he led, and especially in the last month when things weren't going quite so well for him, he was the guy leading on the bench and cheering. And it's hard to replace almost 17 points a game and 38% from the 3-point line. And his ability to do what he did in Game 5, and he did that probably 6 or 7 times during the course of the year. It's hard to just say, wow, we don't want him back, because ultimately we would try to replace him with the same guy if we went with an import that had the same kind of criteria. So he's excited to come back. We've had conversations since he's left, obviously up until he signed to come back. And I think he'll be better this year. I don't know if his numbers will be better, but I do think he'll be a better player for us coming back. And that's what excites our staff.
What about Shawnee Mack? Obviously, he's a full rostered player now. Do you expect? I mean, he's had a massive role already for the team, but does it go another step? Do you even start him potentially this season?
Yeah, well, I think the versatility of having Craig in there now, and what we can do with 1, 2s, and 3s, and how we can play a little bit bigger across the board and maybe be a little bit more of a switching team at times. And Shawnee Mack obviously is a huge factor to what we do, and we may start him. We may alter it during the course of the season. We have a lot of different roads to go down with this roster, and we'll figure it out. But I think the flexibility is there, which is exciting as a coach, that we have some guys that can interchange their positions. And I think Shawnee could be a starter. Like I've always said about him, he's just a guard. He just goes and plays. He can play the 3, he can play the 2, he can play the 1. He's just a player. And when you have those kind of guys, it's hard to get him off the floor, and he's been hard to get off the floor.
DP spots are really interesting too. Obviously, they're really valuable spots now, aren't they? When we say what Sean's done the last 3 seasons, what do you do with someone like Richo and obviously Walter's back, but you have a couple of spots to fill potentially? Is that the way you look at it, or?
Yeah, so that's what we're having my latest Zooms about, is trying to find 2 more developmental players. And so we're definitely going down that path. With Richo, we're kind of waiting and seeing. Walt is back. And then we'll see. We'll try to get a younger point guard if we can, to be in the role that kind of Lucky Barker was as an injury replacement player. And then we'll try to see if we can find others a little bit bigger player up front and give us some depth and practice and have some more bodies. But we're definitely looking to fill out the rest of the roster in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Mika and Darren Smith and our staff have been all over the NBL one. And we have some names, and we'll see what happens in the next few weeks.
You spoke about turning the page earlier and not reflecting too much on the championship. Do you allow the players to do that day 1 of preseason and then turn the page, or do you literally come in day 1 and say what's been done is done?
Well, between me and you, in about 2 or 3 days, they're going to get a text from me about turning the page now. We're not going to talk about, repeating and doing all the things that the media want to say. Are you back to repeat, and all of these things that will be, in play moving forward from the media side of things. We said from day 1 we want to win a championship, and that doesn't change. And we obviously want to win a championship. But we are going to repeat our work ethic. We are going to repeat our standards and our culture, and we are going to repeat, the accountability that we have across the board in our process. That is going to be guaranteed, and that's what we're going to start to focus on in the next few days here when I send this text out to the gentleman about let's turn the page, let's get back to focus. It took us 3 years to chip away to try to get to this championship trophy, which we ended up luckily getting. And now we just got to start this process over again. And last year's gone and dusted, and a new adventure and new struggles and new journey, and we'll see where it leads us.
What motivates you personally? Obviously, you said you know, it won't change your life to win a championship, but it will for the people of Tasmania. You've ticked that off now. So what drives you this season?
Well, the thing that's always driven me is just the passion for this state. You know, again, I fell in love with Tasmania, and I've said it before, it took me 58 years to be there. And so I want to do everything in my possible power to keep smiles on people's faces in Tasmania, to grow the game really at the end of the day across the state for kids. You know, what we do on the floor is important, but what we're doing off the floor to me is unparalleled in the NBL, and to continue to grow that base, to continue to impact people. And hopefully, again, part of my legacy will be the growth of the sport within Tasmania, and the impact that hopefully I can have on people, and you know, putting a good roster out there and putting a good team out there is, you know, half the battle. But for me, again, my joy comes from a Mark Radford who's been in Tasmania all of his life, and being able to take that trophy up to Bernie and show it to everyone back there that it's possible. Those are life moments for me that I will never, ever forget, irregardless of if we can win another one or not. But I think that we have a great opportunity to continue to impact the state in a really positive way, not only on the floor, but especially off the floor.
Just a couple more, I promise. You mentioned about you know, going back to back in the media, talking it up, etc. But how hard is it to do that? You're the hunted now. I mean, you've been the hunted, I guess, the last few years anyway. The way you know, the great form you've been in. But how difficult will it be to win back-to-back titles?
I mean, it's obviously took us 3 years to try to win one, and teams have been fighting for years to try to just get to the grand finals. So it's difficult. But again, it's nothing that we're not going to shy away from, but we're just not going to talk about it. We don't talk about it, as you well know, about the standings or anything other than the process of day to day and week to week and how we go about our business. And so it'll be quite easy, I think, from our standpoint, because the guys that I have coming back understand the process, and they're willing to do the work. And when you do that, good things usually hopefully happen. And sometimes, you know, you have to pivot and do some things here or there, but for us, we'll just keep our nose down, keep grinding. You know, we are going to be the hunted, and I think we have been for the last year and a half or so for sure. You know, we did a great job this year, finishing the season #1 offensively, #1 defensively. And to try to reduplicate those things are going to take a tremendous amount of work, and we'll see if we're up for it.
And last one, we saw Danae post that lovely message you got from Pop the other day. What did that mean to you? I mean, obviously a close relationship, but for him to reach out to you must have been pretty special.
Yeah, you know, before I went on this trip, I actually talked to Don Nelson for a bit. He was in Maui, and had a nice conversation with him. And then when I got back from this trip from Canada, I opened up the mail, and there was a letter in there, and it had the Spurs written across there, and it said Popovich at the top. And I was like, you know, what the heck is this? And when I opened it, the letter was in there. It was obviously handwritten. And yeah, you know, it's amazing when I came back. I think one of the things that I found out is how many people in the NBA actually were following us, because I had so many people since I've been home reach out to me about, you know, the team, and they were obviously watching Alex Sarr, and all the scouts were watching some of the next stars, but they were just so complimentary of our group and myself, and they have someone like Pop, who I end up being lucky enough to play for. He's my workout coach when I was in the Spurs. To write that kind of letter, it's quite emotional for me. Yeah, you just go full circle, and to have that is something that I'll treasure. And what a man.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you soon.
All right, buddy.